Welcome to our Southern Colorado Conscious Living and Dying workshop. We are so happy to have you. We have been doing this sort of work for 6 years, and this is the first time we've done our fall event online. We're very pleased to have you join us. Our focus, of course, this fall is being present with dying, basic end-of-life doula skills for family and community. This focus is a compelling one as we find ourselves longing to bring the sacred and the holy into our lives amidst all the distractions. We want to feel more rooted and grounded in the heart and the body, and how to assist those who are releasing their bodies. So we are at the right place at the right time doing the right thing. And I think all of you can feel that. That's why you joined us. So what I would like to do now is do a brief centering to just bring all of our hearts and our energies together. So in whatever way, make sure you're comfy. And if you're like closing your eyes or dropping your eyes down, you are welcome to do that. And I'm going to have us just take some deep, relaxing breaths together. But we know that the breath draws us back into the body, back into the heart, and into the present moment where all things are possible, where all inspiration is available to us, where we connect with our knowing. And let's imagine that our circle today, even though it is of wide distance, we have people from both sides of the coast joining us today. Even though our distance, our physical distance is vast, the heart has its own way of connecting, and so we connect to each other around this circle with our common intention to grow and to be of service in this pivotal time for human evolution. We are so grateful to come together. What a gift. Let's take another deep breath. And let's just send that out as a blessing to everyone in our circle today. And everyone who will hear about this or with whom you will be able to use these skills. We already are sending that blessing out. And with another deep breath, we are grateful and we bring our attention back. And as you're ready, just open your eyes. See all our beautiful people. All right, so let's begin. What I'd like to do now is I'd like to introduce our marvelous speaker for today, Jan Booth, who is a nurse and a woman of many talents. She has worked in the nursing profession for over 33 years within the intersection of quality of life and end of life. And she is deeply curious about what creates and sustains well-being throughout the human experience. Her initiation into this world of death and dying came during nursing school as an unexpected calling. She had started school with the intention of becoming a midwife and helping birth babies. But then she heard a clear call to serve instead as a midwife for the dying. Since that time, Jan says she has never looked back. Her work trajectory has taken her from the bedside of hospice and palliative care patients to supporting the well-being of caregivers, and now into the larger community to further open our cultural conversation about end of life. Jan also serves as faculty for the International Nurse Coach Association, including the Integrative Nurse Coach certificate programs and end-of-life nurse coaching program in collaboration with the New York Open Center. Jan loves to work with deepening practices on aging and dying. She says she has found that this not only serves to better prepare us for a more intentional end of life, it also seems to clarify and transform how we live our lives here and now. Jan has served as co-faculty for a course in Washington, D.C. called Sacred Journey, Being Present with Aging, Illness, and Dying, in collaboration with the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, D.C. So we're very happy to have Jan in Colorado now. She has led many workshops in her chosen field and is presently on the faculty of the Conscious Dying Institute in Boulder, Colorado. She resides with her husband, Bob Gardner, in Westcliff, but today she joins us from Lafayette, Colorado. This is a gypsy. She loves to travel in her work. So let's give a warm welcome to Jan. Thank you so much, Jan. Welcome.
Thank you, Marcia. I was laughing a few minutes before we started with Marcia and others that I'm in an Airbnb in Lafayette, Colorado, and I had this funny moment where I thought, oh, where am I going to sit and do this class? Because it's a little bit under, it's in the basement and the light was strange. And so I just made myself at home here and went into closets and found little things that I could put behind me and found a lamp in the closet. So that's sort of a great metaphor for working at end of life is you look at what you have, stay grounded and stay centered, and be flexible and creative to help create an environment of healing and caring. So here you are, even in setting up for something like this, I'm practicing those skills. I'm really glad that we're able to still do this, even though we can't be together in person. And I hope that the use of technology will enliven this so that there'll be some time when I'm talking, there'll be time when all of us are sharing in a more of a larger group discussion. We'll have some breakout sessions. Today it'll be breakout sessions in about an hour where it'll be 3 people. And then tomorrow we'll have another breakout session with small groups. We'll be doing some individual journaling. We'll do an experiential practice together in the last hour today. So we're trying to bring in things that help to give a real multidimensional experience for all of us as we dive into this. My years at the bedside working with dying people and their families, those years were transformative for me personally and professionally. And there were many things I learned, but 2 main things have really motivated me into the work that I've done since. I started in 1987 at a hospice in the Washington, D.C. area where I lived for many years. And the 2 things that I'd say continue to put fire in my belly to want to keep doing this work is seeing, just as Marcia said, the potential for sacred, holy healing moments in a culture that has a hard time seeing that potential. And so many moments that just opened my heart and opened my mind and lifted my spirit. The second thing is I saw how significantly unprepared so many people and their families were coming into hospice, and how many people would say, I wish I knew now then what I know now, and why didn't people tell us about it? And why did we spend these last weeks and months back and forth and all the pain of treatments, and we hardly have any time left, and just a multitude of versions of that. And at one point, after years of hearing, what must be hundreds or thousands of families saying some version of that, I thought, I need to move into a different place. I need to move away from the bedside and help to understand where are the barriers for so many of us in accessing and helping to create these potential holy and sacred moments together. And what do I need to learn? What do I need to unlearn? How can I communicate differently? So that's where I am now, in all of you here showing up with your own interest, which I'm going to ask you to speak about in just a few seconds. Is I want to both open up the conversation about living and dying so that we more intentionally can look at the potential at end of life for a natural, necessary, meaningful, purposeful transition out of our physical bodies. And I also want to be part of planting seeds in communities where people develop the capacity and access their own wisdom for being those groups of caring individuals who are safe places in communities and families for people to go to. So every one of you on the call are part of that, and I'm grateful you're here. So what I'd like to do is, one at a time, to hear from each of you. I'd love to hear three things initially. One is your name, or what you want to be called. The second is where you are right now, where you're calling from. And the third is, what is one thing that drew you to this course this weekend, or one thing that you would most like to explore in this time together? Because that helps give me a sense of who you all are, so that it's not just a cookie cutter program here. This is what I'm going to say and we're going to do, and you're all going to do it regardless of what you want. It really helps me so that I can shift and move around the content to meet what you all are looking for the best I can. So I think what I have found, I teach a lot online now. Used to teach almost exclusively in person, but all my teaching now is online. And one little thing I found is helpful is if I call your name instead of waiting for people to go. I'm sure you've seen that in groups where then everyone is quiet and then everyone talks at the same time. So I'll just, based on the order that you all are in on my screen, I'll just ask each one of you. And so your name, where you're calling from, and something that you want to explore in these two sessions, or that has really called you to take this course. So let me start with Einar.
Einar Thorson. I'm in Pueblo, Colorado. And I had both my parents, one back in the 90s and one in 2005, died at home, and I was there along with my sister, and we had hospice care, and I definitely wish I would have known more about it at the time, but it was quite a magical experience for me. So, and then of course Marcia has been talking about this subject a lot over the last few years, so we kept up the conversation. That's it.
Thank you, Einar. Marcia, let's go to you next. Yeah. The magical mute button. It serves a purpose, but there you go.
Okay. Marcia Beachy, Pueblo, Colorado. And the reason for doing this, I want to be of service. We started hearing people say, we want to know more about this. And so my work is to provide education. And so people were interested in death doula. Let's do a workshop on this. and get more formal understanding of what has been learned in the field. So I think my reason for being here is to provide this education and service, but also personally to learn more about the specifics that I don't know. I haven't sat at that many bedsides. I've been more in the consciousness realm and the afterlife realm with this. So this is very fascinating for me to gain those tools right at the bedside and how to hold that space.
Thank you. Angelina.
Hello, my name's Angelina. I'm from Pueblo, Colorado. And for me, ever since I was a little girl, I've always been really enchanted with cemeteries. I've been going there to meditate, and people would tell me that was very strange, but I just always felt so peaceful there, that was such a peaceful, quiet place. And about a year ago, I had a dream, a very clear, lucid dream. I woke up in the dream and I went to a mirror in the dream and I looked into my eyes, and it was me as I see myself at a deep level. And I told myself in the mirror, I am a death walker. And I had never heard that term. And I went to Google that the next day and was researching about what that meant, and it was an indigenous term about kind of helping people cross over. And so I knew it made so much sense about so much of my life. And so I know this is a calling for me, and it's really awesome to meet fellow pathfinders in this journey.
Oh, thank you, Angelina. Anne.
Yes. Ann Porter, Colorado Springs. I love what Angelina just said. I actually love cemeteries too. I haven't meditated in a cemetery, but there's something magical about cemeteries, and especially really old cemeteries. I've had the privilege over the last 2-3 years of sitting at the bedside of both my father and a really dear friend in their final days. Such a holy, sacred process. I'm aware that in the years to come, there will be more people that I love who will be passing. And I really want to deepen my presence for them and my awareness of how I can serve in that process.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. Red Dove.
Hey, my name is Red Dove, and I live in Pueblo, Colorado. For me, what I've found is life's purpose is not something you go out and find. It kind of finds you along your way. And different jobs I've had in healthcare, I've been present, during palliative care and hospice, and helped not only the person transitioning and going through it, but their families coming and going. And what I found is that it's hard for us to live because we've lost connection to the sacredness. We just live our lives and we don't pause to have to honor the sacredness often, or it's uncomfortable because it's not part of culture to be present, and we tend to walk away or not be present in what we're uncomfortable with. And oftentimes I found myself as an employee of wherever I worked being the main person spending time with these individuals. and people coming to me, to the family members coming to me to have discussions about what they're going through and what's going on. And then I had the honor of spending a year of my life in ceremony and ritual, not continuously, but you know. And what I found that is that we have my journey. The purpose that's found me is that I need to be the one to bring that back to individuals and to communities, creating space and offering moments to just honor that with ritual and ceremony. And I feel like I'm just kind of rambling. I just want to learn more because I feel like I'm kind of airy and ungrounded, and I want to be anchored. And I feel this is a workshop that'll help me be more anchored and confident while I walk this path.
Thank you. And I hope that's true and beautifully said. A combination of holding both the air and the consciousness and being embodied enough in ourselves that we can be grounded and calm in the midst of what is sometimes a storm in people's lives. Thank you for giving word to that. Lauren.
Hey, my name is Lauren Hopper, and I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, and I am a caregiver, and I've always wanted to help people, and I started caregiving, and I had 3 patients pass away, and I was the only one in the room, and had these spiritual experiences, like the family member that a loved one came to me and helped me get his soul to cross to the other side. And I've had this gift kind of as a child, and I suppressed it. But now that I'm older, I know that's where God, universe, and spirit wants me to help souls cross to the other side. And I'm excited to learn more and get the confidence that I need, and definitely stay grounded, like she said, because I have moments that I feel ungrounded and I can go, to the other side. I feel lots of times I can astral plane to the other side and talk to the loved ones. But I would love to know more about being the end of life doula and traveling to help others with their souls. And that's all.
Oh, that's all, just that.
Well, I'm not great at speaking.
You are so, I beg to differ. I feel like you've captured in just a few minutes what is really hard to talk about, and you found words for them, and I found them meaningful, so thank you for that. Danya.
Hi, I'm Danya. I live in La Junta, Colorado. I think I'm a therapist, and I think for the most part, like both professionally and personally, just want to kind of embody the sacredness that I feel like comes with death. There's so much like love and appreciation for birth. It's like, can we also hold space for that in death? Because I just think like within my own family and circles that I am in, and in the Western culture, there's a lot of fear surrounding that. And I want to find, help people find that peace and that fear. I gave this eulogy several weeks ago, and it was one of the most profound experiences of my life, and quite an honor. And so I just think that this is where I'm supposed to be today. So thank you.
Good. I'm glad you found your way here. Melinda.
Hi, I am Melinda Chichester. I live in Oxford, Pennsylvania, a recent transient from Colorado Springs. I am a huge Marcia Beachy fan. And I wouldn't miss this just because I adore her. I'm an end-of-life doula. The work found me in 2015. And I feel as if my call at the moment is to help support the doula community, because at present we're having a challenge, certainly because of the COVID, on people seeing this vocation or this work as a real vocation. And so there are a lot of us out there struggling how to develop a business or get involved with the community. I myself is one. And so I feel like I'm missing a piece of the puzzle that I need to bring to the community to help enlighten how we can, you know, I don't even know the language around it at the moment, how we can help people to embrace this work. Most of the people I talk to now don't even know what an end-of-life doula is. And so I am drawn to all of these conferences just for the information, hoping I'm going to find a nugget that's just going to kind of branch or just give me that aha moment that allows me to be able to help others to really launch this passion that we all have at end of life. And there's nothing greater than being close to that veil. There's just nothing greater. So thanks for everything. Truly, this is amazing.
Thank you, Melinda. Cindy.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I live in Gainesville, Florida, but I'm in Colorado Springs at the moment. I met Marcia through Tara Lundquist, and so I have followed her workshops through the years. I am here because this area really piques my curiosity and interest. I am a retired mental health counselor, and I am a minister in my church and interested in mysticism. I love what you did with your emblems behind you. You came into a space where there was nothing, and you created a worship experience, a sacred experience, and I love doing that. I love the mystery of approaching the end of life, and I love the emotions. I love being grounded in the kind of the swirl of spirit and things that are present in that time. And I want to learn what you have to teach. And thank you, Marcia, for bringing Jan to us.
Thank you, Cindy. Mary Beth.
I'm Mary Beth. I'm in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and very glad to be here today. In 1997, I was having a particularly difficult dark night of the soul, and I remember sitting in my car on a hillside and demanding that God give me some clue at that point. I was just desperate. I was just in despair. And I saw two different things. And the one that's relevant here is I was at my mother's bedside, and clearly it was the end of life. And it had a feeling I would have a hard time describing at this moment, but I can feel it again. And I had the sense that it was a future thing. I thought it was a future event, and it was. I grew up in Lancaster, and I returned here in 2004 from Maui, and I came specifically to be present for my parents in their final years. I did not think that it would be this many years, but I guess that's the way that would often work. And I've learned more about being human and love in that 15 years than any of the years before. So it included my mother's passing and my father's passing on Monday. And my mother's passing was in 2009. I hadn't had many experiences with loss other than grandparents up to that point. And I really had a sense of what the numinous has been accessible to me for many, many years. And so I knew a lot about it without ever knowing about it. So, and one of the things that I seem to sense is when passing is about to occur. And so I felt really privileged to be with my mother when she passed, and learned quite a lot about that. And there was a moment several years earlier, actually, when I just had returned, where the scene that I had seen that night was literally right in front of me. And she was almost, on the edge of dying as opposed to living, but she did not die at that time. But that woke me up to this a bit. Between my mother's passing and my father's passing this week, two other very close family members, I seemed to show up on the day before or the day of their death. And so I noticed that also. And with my father, the process of being present was really, I was really lucky, because the facility that he has been in for just almost a year, and now in dementia, some dementia care, has no cases of COVID, but at the end of life, they are really quite generous about allowing family to be present in an unlimited way. I don't mean in the facility, but with the loved one. So I was able to be with my father a lot leading up to this. And the experience felt like it was an evolution, like it was a deepening of understanding what is happening and the experience of it. And with my mother, my role was mostly just presence. With my father, there was some family work to do. And I really became aware of how he participated his timing to allow that to happen. There were just many other parts of it. So the upshot of it is that I've felt for quite a while that that I should consider making a commitment to this in a deeper way and beyond family. And so when Janaya and I were visiting yesterday, she mentioned that you were doing this today. So I'm really glad you are, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
That sounds like good timing. Thank you, Mary Beth, for sharing that, and blessings on the life of your father, who is so recently left his body here.
Yes.
Faithful daughter. Thank you. Hannah, how about you?
Hi. I'm so glad to be here and see all of you. So many familiar faces. And I'm Hannah. I'm in Colorado Springs. I'm also a huge Marcia Beachy fan. Thank you for having me. I'm an acupuncturist, and I love sitting with my patients and witnessing their major transitions in life and marking rites of passage and acknowledging those things. And I have a lot of recently more patients with like terminal diagnoses and like stage 4 cancer, and more accepting that dying process than it's interesting. I just want to expand and also people dealing with their parents dying and having dementia and just so many things that are coming up around like how, yeah, that whole process. And so, yeah, I'd like to just deepen my capacity to be with people as they're going through that and understand more about it. Just, it's like just offering that space of whatever understanding I can bring. But, yeah. Thank you.
I'm glad you're here. So we have two Amy's. There's Amy without any initials and Amy CP. So I'm going to start with Amy without initials.
All right. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. So I'm Amy Gray, and I am also a huge Marcia fan, and I'm so happy to be here. Let's see. I was led to, I've always been a very spiritual person, being aware of multidimensional realities, and since I was very little. And in the last 10 years, I guess 10 years ago, I was led to shamanism and have been to workshops about death and dying and psychopomp work. And I have been at several bedsides, and, I just am all things Marcia, and I'm so interested to hear and learn this weekend to further and deepen the understanding and just kind of get some synchronicities and some confirmations on, people like us trying to help and be of service and be on the same page so that we can get a better handle on comforting people, because we really, as a society, have become detached, I feel, to the whole process of crossing over. And I just feel like it's such a sacred thing. Like birth and death are just such sacred portals to this beautiful gift on earth. And it's just really overwhelming. And just to be more of a support person, like when the moments do come with family members or people reaching out for help, I want to be supportive to the person actually crossing over. And I've done that with several family members, like asked their higher selves in journey work and meditation work to see if they wanted to be open to, just discussing things or, alleviating fears in that, meditative state. And I feel like I've connected with a couple of my family members, especially my grandma. She was so fearful of death, and my grandpa too now. And over the years, I've told him he's 94 now and was just put in a nursing home just recently. Grandpa, he's a World War II vet, and he's just had the most magnificent life, amazing person, but, very scared of death, very hangs on to life. And I always tell him, it's the next great adventure, Grandpa. Like, you've had so many adventures. It's the next great adventure. And, I feel like it helps a little bit, but also like sometimes I feel like I lose my compassion because I'm like, oh my gosh, to people like, death is so exciting. Like it's the next great fun thing, like the mystery, like it is the next adventure. So I need to like rein that in and like be more compassionate with people, because sometimes I get excited about the next great adventure and people are like, oh, that's scary. But I'm getting nervous. Sorry, I'm holding my phone and I notice I'm shaking it. Just to be of service and to learn more with all of you wonderful, open-hearted, spiritual people. I love being with like-minded people to try to calm and alleviate suffering and ease people's fears. What else? Oh yeah, and how to get our services out there. I heard that mentioned as well, like possibly approach hospices and let them know. Like, I don't know if it's a volunteer thing at first or like how to, get the idea out that there are people like us available to help people. And I know, like, anybody in the healthcare industry, I know like they just fall into that. And, they need to be honored and paid more for those services because it's very important. And not many people can do it. Like the one woman said, I always am there. Several people have said that. I'm the one that's there, so I feel like those services need to be put out there, like, we are the people that can help transition, and the family members too, not only the one crossing over, but like, family members preparing the person crossing over, preparing. I know there's some death doula services that, they get the will prepared. They get, the services are very expensive. Like, they get their financial stuff in order all the way to the funeral. So like, there's different ways people can help that are very expensive, or just at the moment of passing. So I'd like to see what your services encompass as well to that respect. But thank you so much, everybody. I'm so excited to be here, and blessings to you all. So excited to learn with you all.
Thank you, Amy. Amy CP.
Okay, my name is Amy also, and I'm in Colorado Springs. I've been working in the area of birth and death since the mid-'80s. One of my godmothers was both a birth midwife and a death midwife from Switzerland. And when I didn't have a clear perspective of death, she made sure I went to three births and 3 deaths within a very short amount of time, so that I understood there's not a lot of difference, only the drama. Fast forward, since March, I've had 15 friends cross. During that time, I was at the site of 4 of them. I think I'm here today just because, having been at so many deaths and being supportive of so many families right now, it's nice to know that there is a community that understands this kind of work. Because when you tell your friends, oh, I can't be with you, I'm going to be 3 or 4 days sitting at the side of someone crossing, they look at you strangely. If you say you're going to be at a birth, it's a different story. When you talk death, people just don't understand. So yeah, think I'm looking for a little support. I've got another friend getting close to crossings. So it's nice to have community. And if you want to have the marketing discussions at some point, I've been teaching marketing for years, so I can answer some of those questions.
Thank you, Amy. Is it Jonia? Not sure I'm pronouncing it right.
Janaya.
Janaya, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. Well, I'm in the Marcia Beachy fan club also. And also, I've been very curious about death and dying since I was young. In high school, I wrote an award-winning series of 10 short stories about a cemetery in my neighborhood. Spent a lot of time in that cemetery. Have worked with shamanic practitioners who have said, you're a communicator from the worlds of the, people who have passed. And thank you, Hannah. Hannah just sent me a loving message. And let's see, so I do have the gifts of communicating with the ancestors, and I also really want to communicate with the living. And that's been my career for 35 years, is communicating with the living. I've attended both births and deaths, worked at a nursing home at 21, where it was end of life care. And pretty stunned currently by my housemate last year was a hospice social worker, and like the things that they could do and couldn't do, the rules and the rules around holding back some of the sacred understanding that we have because of legalities, And so I'm very, very drawn to this training. In addition to being in the Marcia Beachy fan club, to be with other hearts and minds who are in the field of, I would say, the great mystery. And remembering together, you know, like I haven't thought of that award-winning series of 10 stories since I was probably in high school. And so I love remembering with each other. Thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you, Janai. Sandra, you're on mute. Just need to take yourself off. Yeah.
There we go. I'm in Colorado Springs, Sandra Felt. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice and have been my whole adult career, primarily working with trauma survivors. That's been my main calling over the year, helping them heal from their experiences. And one of the things I have learned as I've gotten older, I see more aging issues in trauma survivors, and the fear starts to crop up, and the avoidance. And I've noticed that in our culture as a whole, actually, how we defy death from the get-go, you know, with all kinds of things. And the aging led me to grief and how hard that is, particularly for trauma survivors, but again, for everybody. And that has led me closer and closer to dealing with death. And I know that trauma survivors spend their lives trying to be safe. Everything is all about trying to be safe in this world, and they find their own particular patterns that help them feel safe, whatever that is, but it's going to be some variation of being in control of something. And the ultimate fear is death. And many of them have come close to death during their trauma and do not want to go back there. So death is a huge issue, particularly for any kind of trauma survivors. But of course, it's there for everybody, ultimately. I started doing a workshop last spring, right before COVID hit, about making friends with our own death. And the people who came to the first workshop were pretty enthusiastic about it until we started talking about our feelings about death. You know, doing the paperwork was fine, getting a little support with the grieving situations they've had and the caregiving they've got going on now, and you know, all those things around it. But when I started asking what they're afraid of, what they're worried about their own death, I could just feel everybody clam up. So that's the particular niche that I'm interested in, is opening those conversations, helping people feel safe enough to go there. You know, I think there's kind of a basic myth about if we talk about death, we're going to die. You know, we're going to bring it on. And I don't believe that's true. And I myself have had really good experiences with people dying around me. I've been, you know, had a lot of self-awareness as a therapist for many years. When my mother was dying, I journaled all through the whole thing. I made sure I had a good, strong support system of people could handle talking about her dying. And I've just learned so much from every death that I've experienced with other people. And I guess I'd like to pass that on. But dealing with the fear is the particular niche that I'm interested in, not so much being at everybody's bedside when they're dying, although that would be a gift if I had the chance. So that's where I'm at. I'm in Colorado Springs, did I say that? And when we come out of this, I'm hoping to have the contact information for the other Colorado Springs people, because I hear quite a few are here. Maybe we can get together, maybe even the Pueblo people, the Colorado group.
Yeah.
So thanks. I'm
That's a great
also
idea.
in the training with you, Jan, about the conscious dying.
I know. I was very happy to see your face. So
So
thank you for being here and showing up all the ways you're showing up.
I have participated maybe all 6 years that this group has been doing workshops. They've been really excellent workshops. And I saw your name come up. I'd already registered for it. So I was like, cool.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandra. Let's see, we have a couple more, and then we'll take a little, just a quick stretch break, not an official break, but a little stretch break, so we don't harden in place. Let's see. Let's go with JC next, and then Tracy, and then Lola, and then I think we're complete. So JC.
Hi, I'm Jerry Cooper. I live in Pueblo. I'm not in the Marsha Beachy fan club, but I would love to be. I haven't gotten my registration yet, and I I hope it's in the mail. Anyway, we're friends, so I think I can say that. But anyway, this I want to learn more about what you do, Jan, and uh, listen to all the information that you've come to present to us. Uh, Also find out what other people are interested in having to do with death. I have two elderly parents who are still with us. Dad is 94, and he'll probably outlive me at this rate. So he might be, yeah, I might share with him some of these learnings so he can talk to me at the hospice. I don't know if I'm kidding or not on that, but anyway, if you knew me, you would know that I like to bring a lightheartedness to conversations. So please don't take it wrong. It's a very serious topic, and I wish I had more knowledge when my wife passed. So with that, I'll give up my time now. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm also someone who likes to find the opportunities for humor and laughter in the midst of serious things, and not to deflect, although I'm sure I've done my share of deflecting in the past, but more because it's just all mixed up. Dying is living, and the laughter and the tears and the confusion and the clarity, it's just all there. So I honor that levity as
Okay.
part of life. Tracy. I think you're muted. And Tracy, if it's possible, I'd love to see your face. Not everyone is able to. Great.
Here's my face. Hello, everybody. My name's Tracy Shenoff. Smoke around us from these fires. Anyways, I now live in Fountain, Colorado Springs for a while. Melinda suggested that I come to a presentation a couple of years ago, and it was this class over at the Doubletree. So some of your faces look very familiar to me. I'm honored and thank you. I'm glad I could join today and tomorrow. I'm a big corporate component person. So in my personal life, I have dealt with death at a very, very young age. And in the last couple of years, I've lost 70 personal family members and friends. So I've gone in and out of delivering babies and being by bedsides over the years. I was approached by hospice in my 30s because the director overheard me managing a family members of a good friend and how I approached them. And, you know, I guess fortunately for me, I'm pretty open and direct, and sometimes that doesn't work for people. I started launching, again, getting back into this. I don't call myself a doula, whether I'm bringing life in or helping transition. But I decided I I'm not supposed to fight it anymore. It naturally is attracted to me. Where I'm at right now is pre-COVID. I built some rapport with some of the nursing homes between Monument and Pueblo, and then COVID hit. And in my corporate world, I've always been online. I've always been a virtual employee. And so naturally, I know what the desensitization happens, you know, whether you're teaching classes or whichever. So it has been very difficult to adapt to not being able to go by bedsides. I don't have a nursing credential or any of that. I just have a lot of life experiences. And I'm trying to hone in on what the best package is. I have a lot of modalities. I've studied a lot. At the end of the day, spirit, I just rely on spirit to get me through what I feel the family needs to get through. So when this class came back up, I was like, okay, how are we doing? How you can't naturally, it's not natural for a human being to get on a WebEx or a Zoom and talk about this. I mean, you can take them through certain phases. You can help coach and guide. So I've been allowed to meet with family members outside, but I've not been allowed to enter the homes, nursing homes anymore because of COVID. I also am a grieving recovery specialist, so a lot of the phases, whether somebody is passing or not, I've been able to coach them. I've been able to be there with them, but I don't like the fact that I can't be that personal anymore, that I can't resolve their fear without being in front of them. When I was a hospice counselor and a volunteer, the feedback I always got was my sense of security at the end of the day got everybody through what they needed to get through when somebody's life transitioned. So I'm looking for guidance or best practices, or even if there's programs out there in this collective community on how we're managing the new way of life. I have several friends that are directors of nursing homes, and they're even having a problem just for the fact that families can't even meet their loved ones, and how the depression is actually causing individuals to pass. Mm-hmm. And whatever it is, my spirit keeps saying, this has got to stop. So I'm hoping, you know, with everybody's expertise here in the next day and a half, that something will click on, aha, this is where I need to go. And I know I've talked to Melinda a few times, and she's on this class as well, about how do we target and how do we let people know in the times of fear that there's individuals like all of you and me that will be there and are available, and any of our education at any level is a gift. I don't know, I was just rambling here, so.
Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you.
Lola. You're going to need to unmute, and if we can see your face, that would be great, if that's possible.
Yeah, sorry, my camera isn't working.
Okay.
My name is Lola West. I'm from Pueblo, Colorado, and I'm an ordained minister who has worked as a chaplain for over 25 years. So I'm very comfortable working with people who have different spiritual traditions, or who don't even know if they have a spiritual tradition. And during my work, I've done a lot of work with families who are grieving losses. I've been there several times when people have actually died. Particularly the last 16 years, I've been working at the state mental hospital. And so I've had the real privilege of being there with patients who have no one else to be with them in their final moments. And I'm able to be there and to witness that. And I think that's important, to have someone there who witnesses you're moving from one realm into another. I've done a lot of grief and loss work too, so helping people to recover from losses that they have had to endure. I really have a personal interest this time in doing this class because my husband has a terminal illness. And so I want to make sure that as we walk him through his final days, that we do everything we can to make that transition not just easier, but much more meaningful for him. And I also, in particular, want to find out if there are some things I can do to help my grandchildren in that process. So I'm looking for things that we can do to help youth and children in preparing for this and in helping their loved one make that transition. I think that's important for everyone to be involved in, no matter what their age. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Just make a little note to myself about that. Well, my goodness, isn't it something? The backgrounds, the passions, the calls to this work, the curiosity that all of us in our own way share. And I hope that in the 3 hours today and the 3 hours tomorrow that we'll touch on enough of the things that are in your heart and on your mind to plant seeds that will continue to grow in you. This is not a full official end-of-life doula program. There are many things we won't be talking about, but there are hopefully connections that will be made, ideas that will be birthed, and calling that will be deepened. As well as the community that is built, that can be built out of a group like this. So hopefully we're going to meet what you all are hoping this course will be the start of. And the fact that you're already here, and some of you even gave mention to, telling people that you were going to do this class, and that often response that we see in people of either why would you want to do that, or isn't that sad, or whatever. The ripples of conversation opening have already started just by you signing up for this course and anyone you might have talked to about it. So that's great. It's happening already. Let's take just a minute, and however you're able to and want to from where you are, I would suggest yeah, Marcia?
We have one more person, Roger Betts, Reverend Roger Betts, who's just joined us.
Oh, okay.
Give him some time.
Okay. Did you just now come on, Roger?
Yeah, I was
okay.
I was leading the workshop, and
no problem. I just didn't know whether I should tell you what we're saying. 3 things: your name, where you are right now, or where you're from, and one thing that drew you to this, or that you're hoping to explore in this weekend's work.
Yeah, thank you. My name's Roger Butts. I'm a hospital chaplain. I work in Colorado Springs at Penrose and St. Francis Health Services, and I'm here because one, I've known the conference a long time and love the organizers and Marcia and everybody, but I also really wanted to hear more about this. I work with palliative a lot. I work with end of life a lot. But I work in a hospital. So this is just something I want to explore a little bit more. And if I get invited by this group, I'm gonna go if I can. So, and I am at work, and I've got this thing from 1976. So if it goes off, I'll have to leave and see some humans. Who I'm at work now, so I'm on the pager. So if I leave, that's all that means.
Okay, we won't take it personally.
Yeah, right on.
A pager, I remember pagers.
My friends are like, "Do you have an 8-track to go with that?"
Yeah, right, right. Or one of those big phones in the car, like this big. Okay, thank you, Marcia, for drawing me to Roger's arrival. And let's just take however you like to do it. What I'm going to do is just stand up and stretch. You know, I find it really helpful when I've been sitting, the stretches back and forth. And also because we've been kind of pretty much looking one way, to just gently move your head around, drop your jaw down if there's any clenching that you might be doing. And if any of you are feeling low energy, you might just shake a little bit, you know, shake hands, shake your body, or jump up and down a little bit. So I'm going to do any or all of the above. And let's start in 1 minute. Always my favorite part of a workshop is when everyone goes around and just starts to speak a little bit about who they are and why they're there. I just find it a very simple and profound moment where we speak something of our truth, and we put out as much as we're able a sense of authentic, this is who I am, and this is how I want to serve. And I heard that from all of you in spades, so I'm really happy we're here. What we're going to do today, I'm going to talk just a little bit about a really brief overview of where we are in end-of-life care right now in 2020. What I see as a couple of the really important cultural impulses that are leading us. And I'll talk just a little bit about COVID and its impact. We could speak a lot more, and we will speak some more tomorrow. You know, a couple of you have given voice to what a major pivot this has been for any of us who work in person with people at end of life, let alone all the other major pivots that have gone in on our lives that are happening. So we're all learning together. How do we find the best and the highest care in a time of COVID and isolation? Talk just a little bit about that, just mostly to, again, plant seeds. And then what we'll do is we'll talk about this idea of compassionate presence and why it's so important, and in fact is the essential piece of what we do. And at that point, you'll go into breakout rooms of 3 people, and there'll be a question that I'll give you, and you'll talk about, and we'll debrief that a little bit afterwards. And then the last hour, we're going to start with an experiential practice of letting go that has to do with our hands. It's a very simple, beautiful practice that can also be used with other people in a time of virtual communication, also can be used. And we'll follow that by talking a little bit about grief and loss. And again, you know, as Sandra and several others have given voice to, this is such a very important part of being present at end of life, to have a more increased literacy and skill building around grief, and how we can do some of that work ourselves, but also find ways to work with others to help them to explore what for most people is something just to be avoided. So how do we really flip that narrative, as they say? And then we'll end with a journaling practice after that. And tomorrow we'll be talking more about the process of dying, how the body dies, all the different levels, all the different ways that the physical body dies, and that the self changes and transforms, and have a little storytelling around that. And then we'll look a little more at each of your wishes for the last part of your life. And well, I'll talk more. I'm not going to go into more detail about that. We'll talk more tomorrow morning about what the day tomorrow is going to look like, realizing I'm giving you way too much information about what to expect. Let's just do it. So a few words about what's happening in end-of-life care. I think many of you are well aware of it, just given your own interest in the psycho-spiritual, the cultural transformations that are happening around us. I think many of you are aware of that. But there are there is a whole new impulse, a whole new wave of innovation and new insight that has been emerging. It's been emerging for a while, but I can say I've really seen it increasing in the last 7 to 10 years. And what I'm seeing is that initially back in the 60s and 70s, in this country at least, there was a big disruptor called hospice care that came and changed how we die in this country. And over the decades since then, hospice and then palliative care, which also was another impulse, just to be clear in case any of you don't know the difference, hospice care is the care for people who are dying who, at least in our country, have been assessed to have at least 6 months to live. In truth, still 40 plus years later in this country, most people come into hospice programs with about an average length of stay of 10 days to 2 weeks. So clearly, when we're dying slowly, most of us, from things over months and years, there is a whole missed opportunity to have support and open conversation if we're only coming into the end-of-life specialist care in the last couple of weeks. And so I think that, along with other changes in our culture, have been part of this new wave that is emerging, that is more innovative and community-based, and it's drawing from both new ideas and old wisdom. So some of the old wisdom, I would say, that is re-emerging in modern times has to do with returning death to its natural place in the cycle of living and dying, and returning death to the idea of potentially sacred and holy time in a human life. Also returning death to the center of our families and our communities. So it's moving away from isolation, from a strictly biomedical model, and from a sense that it's an aberration, it shouldn't be happening, it's a tragedy, and it's a mistake. So that's what's so fascinating, is it's like a major course correction. We went so far, starting who knows when, scholars could say different times, but let's say in the 20th century, with this incredible ability to cure diseases and to have things like insulin and CPR and all kinds of oxygen for people with lung disease, and you could go on and on. We did and have done amazing things. And one of the unintended consequences is that we lost the sense that dying is a natural part of human life. So it now seems like, for many people, a mistake and something to be stopped. So now we've got this wonderful, to me, it's wonderful. I've been waiting my whole life for this new emergence of innovation and old wisdom that is drawing all of us on this call and many other people to say, I want to be a part of serving dying in a different way. And you see it in things like changes in the funeral industry and green funerals, and a much more open approach to the naturalness of the body dying. You see it in things like death cafes in communities, where people who are strangers come together at a Panera or a library room or a pub or who knows where else. And the one question that they talk about is, what brought you to this cafe? That's the only question that a death cafe asks. And then people just talk, right? And end-of-life doulas, death midwives, whatever you want to call them, end-of-life coaches. All these informal new roles are emerging because the old roles no longer serve exclusively. So the original disruptor of hospice, which was amazing. I was, fairly early on involved in the hospice in our community, and in fact, my dad's church was one of the supporters of the second hospice in this country. I've been around it a long time and really loving the rebellious nature of it. I love the badass nurses I worked with in the beginning, you know, who really had to break new ground. And as often happens, what was new then can become, as it becomes bigger and it gets rules and it gets limitations, and insurance and Medicare get involved with certain rules, there's a certain rigidity that can happen where it's hard to be innovative anymore. And I say that with great blessings to all my hospice colleagues, who, many of whom are feeling some of that rigidity and are trying to figure out how to do the best care. So what happens in a culture when there is a need that's not being met, and when there is something new that is trying to emerge, is it starts on the fringes and the edges, and then it starts to move more and more mainstream. So that, yes, it makes sense that most people don't know what an end of life or death doula is, because it's a really new term. It's a new term for a very old, ancient role that has been played probably from the beginning of time, mostly by women, but not always. But often the wise woman, the woman who helped with transitions, the shaman who understood the power of coming into physical life and leaving physical life. So there have been roles, but we've lost in the culture. Many of us grew up in North America. We've lost a lot of that connection to the sacred in intact cultures, where a lot of that is still living. There's not that loss like we have had here. And so our healthcare system is based very much on a biotechnical medical model. So even hospice, being different, being professional and being more holistic, where truly the life of the spirit is also talked about, but it's still embedded in our healthcare system, which is much more of a biomedical model. So all of this is calling us to be, those of us who are feeling this particular call, to be part of this new and ancient way of seeing dying as a natural part of life and as a potential for sacred transition, and also a wake up to the beauty and fragility of being alive. It's nothing like a near-death experience or a scary diagnosis or a significant loss in your life for many of us to have that be the cracking open, the breaking apart that opens our eyes and our hearts to aliveness, to the beauty of living, right? Which is why, to me, it's always made sense to talk about dying and to go with Angelina and others to the cemeteries and to feel alive there, because it's a reminder that this is precious and that all we have is right now, and how easy it is to forget that and to go on automatic pilot, right? So, so that's, I think, probably enough about that for now, in terms of the wave of innovation that we're riding right now. And I am so grateful for that wave, because it is part, to me, of the cultural transformation that many of us have been hoping for, that is moving us forward in the evolution of our consciousness as humans. So just a little bit about COVID. The challenge may seem really obvious, but let's just say it. The challenge of COVID has been that many of the things that those of us who are looking for a more compassionate, humane, open end of life, many of those things, the ability to be with people, to have conversations with people, to have touch, to have healing modalities involved, to grieve openly together, to bury our dead together, all of these things are now very limited because of our restrictions for being together physically. So what is happening, and some of you may be more aware of this than others, what is happening in the end of life community is that we're scurrying and bumbling and desperately trying to find new models in this time to serve as best we can. So some people are putting attention on having more open conversations around what would you want if you were to become seriously ill and quickly with COVID, because of people who may be young and have never talked and thought about, would I want to be on a ventilator, or what is most important to me if I had a really serious illness. So for some people, COVID is an opportunity to have more open conversations about what matters most to you, what is your feeling about extraordinary means, and do the people in your life know that? Because some of these, as I'm sure you all are aware, some of these conversations, especially in, boy, I was so aware of it in my friends working in New York City when there just was this huge number of very seriously ill people and dying people, and not enough time to have conversations. So those families who had already talked about this had if you can say, an easier time. I don't even know if that's the right word, but there was less suffering than the many families who had never talked about it before, and decisions were being made over phones and iPads and in a very short amount of time. So that's one thing, is that it has pushed a certain opening of conversation. But the other place where I think we're having to dig deep is to have a different understanding of what it means to be with someone. So those of us who love the hands-on care, like me, and I'm sure many of us, who love being able to touch, to hold hands, to feel what happens when you're in front of another person. We're having to not only deepen our own understanding of what does it mean to connect with and be with someone, and what resources do I have and what capacities do I have when I can't physically be with someone. What do I believe about speaking from the heart? What do I believe about prayer? What do I believe about the ability to communicate in a non-verbal way, in non-local consciousness? And I think we're being not only individually really digging deep to understand that, but we're finding ways in the end of life world to communicate that to families, to say, to hear the pain and the suffering from people who are not able to be together physically, and to share some ideas about ways to connect non-locally and non-physically. So I think it's pushing a conversation that is fascinating to me, that has been reserved for probably many of you on this call would be part of that group who are very comfortable with that. But that's not something that most people easily talk about. So how do we go from it just being a tragedy that we can't physically be together and a mistake and an aberration, and how do we find an opportunity in this time to really explore and speak on a more open level with each other about non-local consciousness and communication from the heart and at another level. We're also getting to know the virtual world of Zoom and other technologies for classes like this, certainly for conversations with families about goals of care, you know, between a healthcare facility and someone in the home. We're learning the end of life. I mean, the funeral industry is learning a lot about online memorial services, and again, it's important to acknowledge what we've lost and the suffering that comes from that, and to look for the opportunity. So for example, there have been several memorial services I've been a part of where people who normally would not have been able to be together because of the travel involved were able to be a part of this celebration of life, this memorial service, when it was virtual. And we're all getting more creative about being able to bring in music, to bring in live music, to have an understanding of how not to have terrible audio with that. So it's a completely moving target right now. We're all right in the middle of it. You all are part of that pioneering. Whether this is what we wanted or not is irrelevant now. It is what is for now. And so finding the ways to still be authentic, compassionate, grounded people, able to communicate with others that this is still normal and natural and sacred time. That's where we're really being challenged, because we're not able to right now practice in the ways most of us are used to practicing. So we're learning from each other. No one has it all figured out. Each one of us has some insight to bring about how do we navigate in this time. So I think I'll leave the COVID conversation, which could be much bigger and longer. But I think I'll leave it there for now, just to kind of name some of the challenges and some of the opportunities and the reframing that it's calling from us to still look for the basic connection, authenticity, sacred nature, ability to love and care for in this time. Before we switch to working in dyads, is there any question that feels important to ask right now? Janaya, is your hand up or is it? No, okay. Oh, it's hair, yeah. Marcia.
It's really beautiful what you have said, because what you are inviting us to do is to be co-creators in something absolutely brand new. And so to be co-creators in something brand new, we have to say, we don't know how to do this now, right? But there are opportunities. You keep mentioning there are opportunities to figure this out step by step. So as communities, as co-creators, let's take back our power that we will figure this out, even if we can't be together in the same way. So I offer, this is a really creative opportunity for all our attendees today to be a part of that thought process.
I agree completely. I love the use of the word co-creator. And in fact, you know, there's this idea that we can't solve problems using the same skills from the past that haven't been working. So this time is calling for something new. And for many of you, all of you on the call, I would say, just based on how you checked in, you all and your understandings, insights, capacities in feeling a familiarity and ease with your understanding of the spiritual world. You're who we need right now. Your understanding is really important for us moving forward. And the key, like anything new, is how we communicate that. Because you can have the insights and not be able to find the words to meet someone where they are. So right now, there is an opening because of this strong desire on people's part to connect. There is an opening to new ways of thinking. So part of what I hope continues to come for all of you is finding the vocabulary, having the understanding within yourself of what insights you have to offer and being able to communicate that to other people, because there's an openness to new ways now that is often not there when things are more familiar and comfortable. You know, it's like that, you know, it's a Rumi poem that's been made into song, but it's when we're broken open that the light comes through, and that's definitely where I would say where we are right now. So,
Jan,
yeah,
this is Tracy.
yeah.
The other piece of that, the experience that I've gone through with New York and attending some funerals, etc., is the change management of helping facilitate families that maybe are accustomed to traditional funerals. And you had mentioned it, and everything you said resonated and was spot on. It's the change in coping with that change, even for extended families when they're planning services, when you get to that fact. And in our monthly meeting with a grief recovery specialist, one of the educators said, it's a great reminder that regardless of what is going on, everybody's grieving behind a mask. And they did a really good job about helping people, even the person who is transitioning, not only for their changes, but the change management above and beyond in this new norm. So I really appreciate how you articulated what you just went through. A lot of insights resonated with me, so thank you for that.
Good, I'm glad. And I appreciate your naming it as change management. I think every one of us could probably plot ourselves over this past 6 months on a typical, change theory graphic, from the initial just overwhelm and change and a kind of freezing and resisting to then there's often a kind of ornery period where we're just pissed off and not wanting to figure it out, just upset and angry and depressed and isolated about it, and then a kind of coming into, if we're lucky enough to come into this next period of understanding and transforming what is happening. This whole norming, storming, transforming, that's one change, group change dynamic that often we hear in the corporate world. But there's also, if you want a more mythic look at it, to think of something like the hero's journey or the heroic journey, where, like many of our fairy tales and many of our movies like Star Wars and many of our own lives, there is an event that happens that throws our life into chaos. We go from familiar to unfamiliar, and we are tested, and we are lost in the woods, and we find gifts, and we work hard to gain insights and to find our way, following a path that may be dimly lit but is somehow lit, out to the next part of our life where we are transformed. And that was a very informal way of talking about the hero's journey, but it's a fascinating model to me, and it's something that's very meaningful to me, but also I've seen in many other people. When you talk about how do we learn from those struggling, stressful, challenging times, and what is it to hope for in terms of transformation, and how is that happening right now? I'm sure you all have had these conversations many times with people in your lives during COVID. Where do we get to a place of enough understanding and a glimmer of seeing that there is transformation moving us forward in this struggle? It's not just a mistake and an aberration. It's kind of a reflection of looking at death. So what is it that's dying in our lives right now that we're resisting? What is the new birth that is coming out of this time of COVID, that's coming out of your own personal struggles, that is coming out of someone's physically letting go of their body? So that is change management on a very practical level, organizational, your personal life, how you have found your way in managing the change of the last six months. But then there's a mythic level of this that I think is also happening. So all that from change management, right? But I think it's important to name it to help us not just feel that we're lost and that it's only chaos. And I think most of you know that there's a lot more than chaos happening here, but many people feel that in the immediacy of someone being very sick and dying anyway, but certainly in the time of COVID, it can feel even more chaotic when we don't even know how to care for each other and grieve in this new way. And that's where people of imagination and people of courage and people of insight like you all and many others out there are going to help move us forward, because it's a new way of imagining this time. An essential skill and capacity for being with people who are seriously ill and dying, and for those who are grieving around them. An essential way of being is to develop the calm, mindful, open-hearted, and grounded presence of being with others. And every one of us on the call know that in our bones. We've experienced it many times, and we know what it's like when someone is with us coming from that place, and we know what it's like when someone is with us and they're not coming from that place. We also know in ourselves what it feels like to not be grounded, to not feel open-hearted, to feel tight, to feel angry or resentful, or to be so open-hearted that we don't even know where our boundaries are. Any of those things that can throw us off, right? Any of the extremes. So that ability to develop mindfulness and having some significant awareness of how our mind works and how it can help us and how it can hurt us. So the idea of mindfulness or meditation is not to empty the mind, because the mind, the way the mind is to stay active. There's no emptying, but it's the idea of being aware of thoughts coming in and thoughts going out, and noticing it with that part of us that is separate from mind, that is complete, pure presence. And as much as we're able to tap into that through the skills of drawing attention to breath, like Marcia did with us today, that simple grounding at the beginning of a meeting that says, I leave behind the busyness of my morning. I am here right now, not in the past, not in the future. I'm here right now, and I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to feel my feet on the ground, to feel my seat in the chair, to feel the back of my chair supporting me. I know what it feels like to be in my body and not in my distracted mind. So these simple practices of deep breath, of noticing the activity of our mind and bringing our attention back again and again to one focus. Breath is often the easiest, but many people will use words or sounds, chanting, that can be what our mind focuses on instead of giving attention to every thought. And in the same way, there is an emotional version of that as well, where we become aware enough by these calming practices to notice our emotions coming in and out like our thoughts do. So here comes fear, which is a big one, right? When we're dealing with serious illness, the change, the loss of illness, the loss of roles in our lives that have been significant, the loss of people. Just think of the losses we've had just in our daily lives and the things that are enlivening for us since COVID started. So having that awareness of our emotional life, that emotions come and emotions leave. And that's particularly important when fear comes in and out. So I would say that the two pieces that really help us with that deep compassionate presence, one is to know what it feels like to be mindful, open-hearted, and embodied in my body. And the second is then how I communicate with another person. So my ability to listen deeply to another person without needing to have a conversation necessarily, where I come in and say, oh, I had that happen to me too. It's a different kind of communication. Conversation and dialogue and back and forth and interrupting, that has its place and it can be wonderful. This is a different way of being with someone, especially someone whose energy is limited, and someone who would really benefit from a safe place to be able to talk about things that are hard. And some of you mentioned, I'm that person who people often come to, you know, so you've already been doing this work. So that grounded, mindful presence, and then the ability to listen without interrupting, without sharing my story, without the need to give advice unless asked, without the need to fix what feels painful to hear, and that part of me that wants to make everything better. Many of us who are nurturers and healers have a part of us that want to make things better for other people. And there's a part of that that can be fixing that is not healthy. And there's a part of that that can be holding space and holding presence that I think is healthier. So I'm going to have you in groups of 3, and you're each going to take a turn to speak, and then you'll have 2 opportunities to listen. And the question that I'm going to have you speak to is, what's the most important thing you want people to know about you as you move through the end of life? What's the most important thing in this moment? Can change. What's the most important thing you want people to know about you as you move through the end of your life? And you're each going to have 5 minutes to talk. And the role of the 2 people who are listening is simply to be present, to feel yourself in your body. When your mind wanders, to bring it back to the person talking. If there's a clarifying question that you, the listener, feel you need to ask, that's fine to speak. But mostly what you're doing is listening. And then if you would take turns as the listeners, one of you, to take a minute or so and try to reflect back what you've just heard the person say. So a summary of what you heard, and to ask if, did I get that right? Is that what you said? And so there'll be 2 of you listening and 1 person talking. So just agree in the first round, I'd say the person with the shortest hair is the one who's going to talk, okay? And then just agree between the 2 listeners which one of you is going to do a reflection back, a kind of summary reflection back. And then, of course, the next time you're listening, the person who didn't reflect back will have a chance to reflect back. So you'll each have a chance to just fully listen, to speak, and to be the one who's listening and reflecting back what you heard. Does that make sense? You each have a chance in 5-minute segments. And the question again, what's the most important thing you want people to know about you and what you want as you move through the end of your life? Okay? And I'm looking at the numbers. Let me just see. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. What I might say, Marcia, is if you stay out with Einar and Angelina and I, would that be all right? I'm kind of putting you on the spot. It'd be hard for you to say, no, that's not all right. Thank you. And that way we'll have 5 groups of 3 if I did my math right. So Angelina and Einar, how does that look? Do we have 5 groups of 3?
I see 20 total.
Ah, you're right. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Okay. So, so Marcia, how about if you do be a part of it, and we'll have 1 group with 2 people.
Yeah.
It's Marcia's practice for today in change management. Here, do this. No, do that. Okay, so there'll be one group with two, so you can you have a little bit longer, maybe 7 minutes if you want to talk. And if in a time you, the person who is speaking, and you've spoken for 4 minutes, let's say, leaving a minute for a reflection from the person who's going to be reflecting back. If you truly feel that you've said all you need to say in 2 minutes, then that's fine. Just maybe pause a little bit, everybody, in case there's something more that comes out. But if you're done before that time, then just move on to the reflecting back. Did I get that right? Take a pause and then move to the second person to share. Okay, so the challenge with any of these breakout rooms, whether it's in person or it's online like this, is the managing of time. So you'll have a total of 20 minutes in this breakout. And I'm suggesting 5 minutes each person. You have a little extra time there just because you may want to say hi to each other in the beginning and maybe have a few moments at the end just to sit quietly together. But so imagine about 5 minutes per person. So the person who is not reflecting back, the listener who is just simply purely listening, would you be the timer and let people know when you have 1 minute left? Or maybe the group can decide how much, when you would like the warning. Most people like to have a warning when there's a minute left. That makes sense? Did I just threw a lot of instructions at you, but I think you're a highly capable group and you have done this kind of thing before. So, all right. So we'll have groups of 3 and then we'll have one that will be a pair. If you haven't done breakout rooms before, is there anyone who's never done a Zoom breakout room before? Just put your hand up if you haven't. So it looks like maybe everybody. Oh, okay. So what, you don't have to do anything. You're going to be assigned to rooms. It's a little bit magical. It's a little bit Star Trek-y, but you will be zoomed into your room where you will see who your new partners are. And then you'll see a warning at the top of your screen of how much time is left. So that's an additional way to help manage the time. And then at the end of the time that Angelina is putting in, which is 20 minutes, you all will be automatically brought back to the whole group. Okay? I just noticed something. I just noticed the time, and I had said a break at 12. I'm just wondering, do we go ahead and take a break in 20 minutes, or are we okay with that? Let's just do that. Flexibility. We'll take a break in 20 minutes when you come back. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well,
So we're ready?
Have a good time. A good conversation. It's really less of a conversation and more of a witnessing and listening with some reflection back. But I hope you find it meaningful.
20 minutes. Okay.
An insight they'd like to share of your experience of either listening more fully to someone speaking and less conversationally, or being the one who was listened to. Let's take a couple comments or insights from someone who'd like to share about that. Sure, Melinda?
I was so pleasantly surprised to see how emotional we got, and just tapping into, and we had different perspectives of what that looked like, and it really was heartwarming to see that even just talking about end of life, you can get emotional around it, right? And I see why my parents don't want to talk about end of life. It's emotional. And so, but that was a pleasant experience. Thank you.
Well, and what I'm struck by, Melinda, is that, we've only known each other, some of you know each other, before this, but for the most part, as a group, we've only known each other a couple of hours, and you didn't have a lot of preparation for that. And I gave you a question that was not your own. And so even with all of that, when you can come authentically as yourself with other people coming authentically and willing to explore what that might be like, that's beautiful that that was an experience you had.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Anyone else? Something, either being someone who was listening and what that might have been like to hold back more of the speaking and just being there, or what was it like for the other two listening to you? Or even answering the question. Is there anything about that question? Did anything come out that surprised you from that question?
May I?
Please, Marcia.
So it really helps to have practice listening. And I just find myself really grateful that my work has given me that practice, because it is easy to lapse into stories or whatever. But we had everything from a fairly complex, idealistic view of end of life, what we would want, to Amy Cook Porter, who was beautiful. Hers was very simple, and really honoring that we actually have no idea how much control we'll have, right? We can put out the ideal, but we don't know. And so I really appreciated her just sharing to go upstairs and take a nap. That's the plan. And the rest of us had more complex things we wanted. So it's very humbling. We're talking about a theoretical event, aren't we? But it does open the heart and open the door.
That's what I find. The people who have been able to imagine and talk about this for months or years ahead of time are more able to then make the pivots and the shifts as things change. Someone you thought might be your caregiver is no longer able to. Someone who shows up who ends up being a really important person who you never had imagined would be part of a scenario. Someone who imagined that they were going to die at home in their own bed, and they end up, for a variety of reasons, in a hospital or an inpatient facility. How can I still bring what's at the heart of what matters most to me into any situation? And that's what we're having to ask now in a time of COVID. What is at the heart of what matters most to this person and this family? And how can we find a way to bring that caring, healing relationship, caring, healing environment, those moments, into whatever the scenario is? Anyone else? Let's take one other, if there's someone else.
I know I missed
Yes.
the workshops, and I apologize for that. But I do have, I'm getting a sense here, because when you try to talk to people about this, it's as if the conversation is going to jinx them. So it's almost as if we have to really be advocates for ourselves. We have to, write down and spell out and say, well, I know you don't like to talk about it, but I'm talking about myself. This is what I would like, when that time does come. Is that something you find, or is there a way to help people to come to talk about something that's going to happen for all of us? But when you try to do it, with friends or people even you work with, they'll say, oh, that's interesting, and they walk away kind of thing, or they'll say, oh, we don't need to talk about that yet. And so I'm just kind of curious about your.
Yeah, there are a lot of different ways that we can open those conversations. Often it's helpful if you've seen a movie or a TV show that had a scene that you can use as something like, you know, the way that that man died in that movie, like, what do you think of that? Or what would you want? Or sometimes referring to a friend of the family. Let's say I have grown kids that don't want to talk about my dying, but we know good friends who just went through a death that was really challenging because no one knew what that person wanted, and there were all kinds of upsets and different ideas about what that person wanted. So you might use that example of the family of, you know, I noticed how that happened in that family, and I really don't want that to happen for me, for us, and that's why I want to talk about it. So it's that, you know, classic adult learning where you use something in the moment that can be informative. Some people will use a change in diagnosis to be able to bring that up, or a change in condition, more frequent visits to the doctor, to say, I think we need to talk about, in the same way that we put a lot of attention on planning all kinds of things in our lives, let's think and talk about this, even if it's hard. And many, I find that often it's those of us who have more comfort and ease who are leading the conversations for others, and helping people to imagine a different way besides, let's not talk about it now. And we can talk more about that tomorrow as well, because it's a really important part of how, in a mostly death-denying, death-averse culture, do we hold up a different example of how to speak about it. Some people in the death education community joke about the parallels to sex education, where people used to say, well, don't talk about it to the teenagers, because if you do, then they're going to have sex. And it's like everyone else is sitting there going, they're going to be having sex anyway. Let's help inform them so that they can make good choices. So, you know, so that some of that thing too, let's not talk about dying, because then one of us might die. And that's often where humor can be really helpful, you know, just naming it. Let's talk about it later. Roz Chast, the cartoonist for The New Yorker, has a wonderful book called Can't We Talk About Something More Pleasant? And it's her experience of having two older parents who refused to talk about their dying. That's something her mother said to her one day. Honey, can't we just talk about something more pleasant?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Anne.
Yeah, well, I'm sitting here smiling because all of us in our group, okay, instead of talking about what we wanted during our last days, we found ourselves talking about what we wanted people to remember about us, our legacies, in a way.
Yeah.
It's very upbeat.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And that's a wonderful opening conversation also. You know, it could start for some people by looking at photographs and tell me about this, you know, and asking questions to someone in your family, you know, to get the stories moving. And that can move into, what would what would be the stories you would want your grandkids to remember? Or, you know, if I'm saying that to my mom, and or let's say my kids who don't have kids yet are saying to me, you know, what would you want my kids to know about you? So that's another wonderful way to talk about living and dying, is through legacy. I love that came up. Yeah, looks like Jania's group did the same thing. So
we
you can
did
see
about half and half in our group. It was interesting. It was like that, the logistics.
Yeah.
And all the things to hold around that, about, you know, all practicalities of dying. Yes. And then
Yes.
the other part being like lineage. How am I
Yes.
remembering? What's my legacy? What's my place in my family? Do I have children or not? How is that getting passed on? You know,
a sense of the ancestors and the generations going forward, and where I am in that. That's beautiful. In the I teach for the Conscious Dying Institute, and one of the tools we use there looks at some of the practicalities of, you know, how do I want ideally my last days to look? How do I want my body taken care of after death? But it also looks at what's most important for me if I were to die soon, in terms of my relationships and my own spiritual life, and the kinds of questions that are getting us to look at how might I live differently as of this moment because of this awareness of my mortality and the awareness of my legacy? And if that's the legacy I want, and if that's what I say matters most to me, how does that jive with how I'm living my life? So it's a way of sort of pushing us in the way that illness and divorce and our house burning down and all kinds of losses can jar us awake. This is a way with a little more control where we can shake ourselves awake to what really matters most to me. So I love that all these things came up in your conversations, all with the same question, but each one of us will respond in this moment, at least, in different ways that are equally enriching. So thank you all for sharing that. Let's take this last bit of the class to do an experiential practice together. It looks like most of you have pen and paper of some kind with you, but if you don't, if you would get something that you can write with, because at the end of it, I'm going to ask you to write for about 5 minutes. And all you'll need to do is just be comfortable as I lead you through this, and then have a place where you can write down whatever is on your heart or mind. And some people prefer in doing these kinds of experiences where you're going more within. Some people prefer to shut their video off. You don't have to, but I just want to give you that option if it would help you feel even more a sense of being in your own world. And I also will encourage you, if you're comfortable, closing your eyes. So no need to shut the video, but if that would help you, you're welcome to do that. So if you'll get yourself in a position where you can sit for 10 or 15 minutes comfortably, so that your back is supported. You can feel your feet on the floor, or if you're lying down, you can feel where your heels meet the ground. We'll just start like we did at the beginning of the morning with just some nice, easy breaths in and out. And as you're taking those easy breaths in and out, just natural breathing pattern. Let's bring your attention to what it feels like to breathe in and to breathe out. Notice the abdomen and the chest rising as you breathe in. And notice the chest and the abdomen slowly falling back down as you breathe out. Now bring your awareness to your body. Really feel your body. Feel where your feet are on the floor. Feel where you're sitting, where your seat meets whatever you're on. Feel what's holding your back. And gently move your head around so you can feel how your head sits on your neck. Maybe move your shoulders a little bit just to notice where there might be a little tension. Move your fingers so you can be connected to your fingers for a moment, really inhabiting your body. Here I am. But for this time together, we're mostly going to focus on our hands. So let's start by bringing your attention to your arms, from your shoulder, your upper arm, down to your lower arm, and your hands. And I I would invite you now to open your eyes up and just take a look at your hands. Look at both sides of your hands. See if you can really notice what your hands look like on the palms, the way the lines are. When you turn them over, any dots or freckles or wrinkles or veins or scars. Just notice for a moment. Just moving your hands back and forth to the palm and to the top of the hand. And see if you can try to bring your attention to these hands as if you're seeing them for the first time. And imagine your mother looking at these hands for the very first time. Imagine her counting your fingers, looking at your little tiny fingernails. These are the same hands that she held, that she looked at, that she was amazed by. These hands. And they've brought you all the way to this moment. The uniqueness of your fingerprint, just take a moment and see if you can really see a pattern in one of your fingers of the swirl that is unique to you. And take your hands and put them together, your palms facing each other, and just lightly touch. Touch them together, move back. Touch them together, move back. And clasp them together. Maybe put them in a prayerful position. Starting to imagine all the ways that these hands have been an important part of your life. The way these hands have reached out to receive from the world and touch the world. And the ways that these hands have given to the world, to people. This is a major way that you connect to the world around you and the people around you, the pets. Major connector for whatever work you've done and are doing in the world. So think about the ways these hands have allowed you to be really who you came to be here. The hands that have touched, that have been a part of healing, that have cleaned and bathed and washed yourself and others, have pushed things, have pulled things, have held others' hands, have touched other bodies, have held other people, have petted pets. Some of you who love to dig in the earth, these hands have been in ground and soil and helped to nourish and grow a garden. Some of you are musicians whose hands have brought music through an instrument. Think of the work in the world and how your hands have been integral to that, or your volunteer work, the ways you've served. Imagine all the ways you have written, holding pen, pencil, or you've painted, or you've built something. You've held tools. On and on and on. These hands have been such an important part of your life. So now just simply be with both of your hands. I'll stop talking for a minute and just allow yourself to feel whatever arises in appreciation of how key and elemental these hands have been to your experience of being alive in this life. Stay with it if your mind wanders. Keep open. Stay connected to what has been allowed to come through these hands. And now imagine that this is the last moment you will ever see your hands. See yourself like this again. Imagine you really are there at the end of your life, letting go of so much and taking a moment to recognize your relationship to these hands and whatever arises as you say goodbye to these hands. Stay present with it. Find your way now to say goodbye with appreciation, gratitude, care for these hands, for this body. Just take in the preciousness of this moment, this attention and intention to feel that gratitude. And imagine a sweet goodbye to the hands. And when you open your eyes and take out your writing materials, I want you to start writing with the words thank you. Whatever comes. You don't need to share this with anyone unless you choose to. So just let whatever is alive in you right now start with the words thank you. And over on the side of the paper, after you've written thank you, I want you to also see what comes up when you say to your hands, I love you. Please forgive me. And goodbye. Those are the 4 prompts. Thank you. I love you. Please forgive me. And goodbye. But start first with thank you. It'll take 3 or 4 minutes. Just writing whatever comes up for thank you, I love you, please forgive me, and goodbye to these beautiful hands of yours. So for some of you, you may find that you want to continue writing after we finish because what is coming out feels like something you want to keep following. And for others of you, you may find that this might come up in a conversation between now and when we're together tomorrow afternoon, conversation with someone you live with or someone you see. This is a kind of very simple practice. What did we do? We looked at our hands and we imagined from the time of birth till now what these hands have done. And it brought in an exploration of the poignancy of saying goodbye to part of us, of who we are in the world, and also an appreciation, gratitude. And this can be done as a practice with people in this kind of way, or it can be very simply sitting at the bedside with someone when we're able to be together, or in a time of COVID, saying to someone, show me your hand, you know, Grandma, show me your hand, and tell me some of the things that those great hands of yours have done that you really loved. And it can be a conversation starter. If you're with someone, you can just hold and touch that hand. If you know something about your sister that she used to love to play the piano or to garden, you can say, you know, I see your hands and I think of all those times you were gardening, you know, tell me what that was like for you. So it's a simple way of starting these kinds of conversations that acknowledge ending and bring a focus on gratitude and a kind of letting go, a preparation. I mean, in some ways, this could be a daily practice. If it was meaningful to you, it could be something that you do every day. For what these hands have done today, and thank you, goodbye. I don't know when the last time I'll see you, but gratitude for that. There are one or two people that want to say a little something about this before we leave.
I would like to say something.
Please, Red Dove.
I think, well, our hands are extensions of our heart, so it's kind of really unique that you brought up the hands to be mindful of and grateful for. Because I think in life, we often have a disconnect about living, because our mind is always going, like you mentioned, it never stops. So we get stuck in living in our mind, but we were put on in this journey in this life to actually live with our hearts forward and first. And so that's why we were giving the blessings of these hands, because they're extensions of our heart. They come out of our heart chakra. So to honor that and to be mindful of that, what have our hands done to love ourselves and the world, to assist, to do harm, to have they abused, have they hurt, just being truthful and honoring everything that hands do and putting it back into perspective. We're meant to live with our hearts, and everything our hands do should be from love. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I felt that was a prayer you just said. That was beautiful. And for naming also that these hands have hurt, and these hands may have done harm, and others' hands may have done harm to us. And to have some container to be able to hold that. Anyone else? Maybe one other experience anyone would like to share? Lauren.
When she said the heart chakra in the hands, I was kind of in that meditating state, and I could feel my heart like pulsating and getting, you know, bigger and bigger and bigger, and the feeling of the hands. And I thought about my inner child and the love and unconditional love that I remember giving to people. And even if they hurt me, I would still be that person to be like, oh, it's okay, you know, I'll just take it. And then, like, I know you guys can agree, people can hurt you, and you turn the pain into power, into love. Like, going through the healing part of us, you feel the shadow work, and you just throw the love back and find yourself. And our hands have so much love, and that's what we do when people are dying. We hold their hand and show them the light and the Reiki and the love, and just be like, here you go. Where you're going is beautiful and magnificent. Don't be scared. Go to the light. Like, just the experience, I know everyone experiences, just eye-opening and amazing and magical. And then when you can talk to their souls on the other side, is amazing, and you know they're okay, and they're thankful and grateful and blessed. That's all.
Thank you, Lauren, and both Red Dove and Lauren, for helping me to remember that these hands are the connection between our heart and the world. I mean, no wonder, think of all the ways that we show with these hands reverence, you know, when all we can do at the bedside of someone is to hold their hand. So there's a lot of meaning, you know, that can be pulled from this. So we'll end here today. And again, any of you who feel like you want to keep moving in this direction with anything that may have come out, to either talk about it or write about it, I also encourage you, as I'm sure you will do, to get yourself something to eat, to walk on the earth if you're able to ground yourself as you're assimilating whatever this morning has been for you into the rest of the day. And I have one thing I would like to ask you. I'm not going to call it homework because of all the attention that that word brings. So this isn't homework, but I'm inviting you to do this because I think it will deepen your experience tomorrow. And that is sometime between now and 1 p.m. tomorrow, to write a little bit or to talk with someone if it's easier for you than writing, on the question, and this is a question about grief. What have your experiences with grief and loss taught you about grief? What have your experiences with loss and with grief as a response to loss, what has that taught you about grief? There's no right answer here. This is just helping you to become more intentionally aware of what you've learned about grief and how that may be impacting how you move through life. Who did you learn it from? What did the culture or the family around you teach you? And what did those experiences up to this point, what has it taught you about grief? So set aside however much time you want for that between now and 1 o'clock tomorrow. All right. And I think that will help bring you into a little bit deeper and a little more focused place for the work that we'll do tomorrow afternoon. Mountain time afternoon. I guess most of us we're within the continental United States, right? So most of us, it'll be either earlier or later afternoon, I guess. So thank you for your time today and your engagement. It's such a pleasure to be with each one of you in everything you've brought, everything you've said, and how that helps create this space for all of us to go a little deeper. I don't think there's anything in terms of specifics that we need to say. If you could, we'll be letting people into the Canvas space, I guess 5 minutes before 1 tomorrow. Is that right, Einar or Angelina? Is that what we did today?
Right.
Yeah. So 5 minutes before 1 Mountain Time.
Excuse me, do you want to mention saving the chats? Because there's some addresses on there. Does anybody want to mention saving the chats?
Yes, so they are automatically saved because we're recording, but maybe we can just, for if there's anything on here that any of you want to write down now, it will be saved with a recording. They you know, when we post the recording, there's also a separate one of saving the chat. I don't know if you all have seen that in the past, but if there's anything on there, we can officially close now. And any of you want to stay on for a couple of minutes, if there was something you want to write down that was in the resources, that would be another way in addition to the saved chat that you'll get when you get the recording.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara.
On the end time, because I need babysitting, like how long will I need babysitting tomorrow?
We're 1 to 4 tomorrow.
Okay.
I ran over a bit today, and I apologize because I actually like to end for things like babysitting and other obligations we all have. So I went over a bit today, and I'd like to end by 4 tomorrow, Mountain Time, 1 to 4. Anything else that we need to do between now and ending our call today? Thank you all.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.